The humanity, we have ourselves some breaking news on this to the 26th of the 11th 2025. It's techier than techie things, and I thought this was all nonsense, that they were shifting pieces around the board as far as Aston Martin were concerned. Here was the rumour over the course of the Las Vegas Grand Prix weekend that the man who oversaw the split turbo hybrid era of success over at the Boys and Girls from Brackley and Brixhurst, the one that they call Andy Cowell, now team principal of Aston Martin, that they were going to get rid of him. Here was the report then. Andrew Benson, and again, this is important here, for the avoidance of doubt, all F1 journos are created equal, but some are created more equal than others. Andrew Benson said then that Aston Martin Chief Executive Officer Andy Cowell is on the verge of losing his job after just over a year in the role. Multiple sources, senior sources in Formula One, have told BBC Sport that Aston Martin team owner Lance Stroll is posed to depose. You know what, sat this off, it doesn't even matter. Here's what's happened, chat. I'm not even going to read this out. You know the rumour already. Here's what we know. Then, people said that potentially Christian Horner could replace Andy Cowell. Why? Well, for a couple of different things. Lance Stroll wants to collect together a Galacticos of an F1 team. All of the stars, all of the Verstappens, the Horners potentially, and the Adrian Neweys. A Red Bull reunion per se, some said. But that can't happen because Adrian Newey left Red Bull because he didn't agree with Christian Horner and the allegations, the coercive behaviour and all of that gubbins. There was a rumour that Adrian Newey had a stipulation in his Aston Martin contract that prevented Christian Horner from going over there. So vicious and tangible was the hatred that Newey had for Christian Horner. That was what they said then. But again, Joe Saywood, legend of F1 journalism, here's what he had to say. He said that these guys met, that all of that beef was in the rear view, in the past, that what happened is that Christian Horner and Adrian Newey found themselves in attendance at an Oasis concert where apparently they buried the hatchet. Bygones be bygones. However, as at 30 minutes past 5 on the 16th of the 11th 2025, Eric Van Haren breaks this news. Aston Martin confirms that Andy Cowell, team principal since the start of the season, will take on a different role. He will become Chief Strategy Officer. Who will replace him? Well, the new team principal in 2026, writes Eric Van Haren, will be none other than Adrian Newey. Oh, the humanity. Two sources though, Cameron. Chris Medlin, again, legendary F1 journo, accredited no less, says the following. This is where it gets techie, chat. This is madness. Adrian Newey, team principal. Let's read what Medland has to say. Adrian Newey is going to become Aston Martin team principal in 2026. Andy Cowell, the previous team principal and CEO, now becomes chief strategic officer. That's 4 different team principals in 4 years at Aston Martin, with Saf now leaving in January 2022 to be replaced by Mike Crack, who Cowell then took over from, who will be replaced by Adrian Newey. Let me tell you this, chat. This is chaos. I understand that there is durable competitive advantage in instability, and you don't want to be doing these. Get and keep good people, therefore. But Adrian Newey as team principal, has Adrian as brilliant an F1 mind as is Adrian Newey? Has he ever been a team principal before? I need some Euro legend. Has he ever been a team principal? You know what this feels like? Let me argue the case against in the first instance. This feels like Binotto. You remember everyone said Binotto's going to bring Scuderia Ferrari, drag them back to the mountaintops, kicking and screaming, that he's a brilliant F1 mind, a god-tier engineer, and therefore surely by extension he must have all the minerals requisite to doing something over there at the red team with the yellow badge and the black prancing Corsa top. Well, how did that work out, chat? They got rid of him, didn't they? Because leadership, innovation is something very different. 2 different entities, they cannot exist in the same space. Some would argue that to be a good manager and a good leader, that necessitates that you have to take off your aerodynamicist, mechanical and engineer cap, that they can't exist in the same space, that the interlocking portion of the Venn diagram is a myth, a unicorn. So I ask you guys the question again, is this a good appointment? Adrian Newey, team principal, of course he's the last airbender, man who did his thesis in ground effect cars at university in 1980 something. He's a god tier F1 mind. There is no better guarantee of F1 success than Adrian Newey. Lest we forget, 12 12 constructors, 13 drivers championships. Adrian Newey is that guy. Last airbender settings proper. But surely that means, Lawrence Stroll, that you hive him away, let him crack on with what he wants to do, right? I don't know if this is a good decision, chat. I'll be honest with you. Team Principal Adrian Newey. Surely that distracts him from what he's meant to be focused on. If you read his book, How to Build a Car, in there, Adrian Newey says that he just wants to focus on building cars. Yeah, he's the last airbender, but he needs the bandwidth requisite to do it, to put his pen and paper and pad to good use. OG Zilla, I always wondered what New thought about Horner's rumours. I guess we have our answer now. Also, F1 website announced the news that, yeah, you can take it to the bank, OG Zilla. I wouldn't break it if it wasn't actually breaking news. So here's the next thing then, OG Zilla. What happens to Christian Horner now? What? Where's he going to go? Christian Horner, he was the dude that was meant to be team principal over at Aston Martin. Yeah, Lawrence Stroll would give him all the equity that he needs and desires. Of course he would. But now what? There is no room at the Aston Martin not for an equity-seeking team principal in Christian Horner. It's almost like Adrian Newey has done that deliberately, almost to spite Christian Horner, to make sure that there's no way, that we don't have space for you, Christian. So where does Christian go next? Alpine, maybe, potentially. Flavio Briatore settings. Who knows? But not Aston Martin. Although, go on, let's speak to this specifically, because I don't know whether this is a good... I don't know. Adrian was already there as technical director and shareholder, right? Like, he was already there. So why allow him, therefore, to focus on the things that he needs to focus on? The rumour is that this chap in Adrian Newey and Andy Cowell weren't getting along. It was one of these. It was friction settings, and one had to go. The Aston Martin town was not big enough for the both of them. Surely this has to be a temporary measure, because Newey could have become TP 1,000 times before. He didn't do it. I don't think they do it temporarily though. Why would you? You don't install. This isn't caretaker managers. Don't install caretaker team principals when you already have a god tier F1 mind like Andy Cowell in place. Lest we forget, this is who we're deposing, by the way, chat. Andy Cowell oversaw the engine program over at Mercedes in 2014. What happened shortly thereafter, chat? If not the most dominant era in F1 history. Mercedes and the boys and girls from Brackley and Brixworth won 8 constructors back to back to back under the helm of Andy Cowell. Now this means they're keeping him. But the question, therefore, is this, for which we need to answer. Which one of them would you pick as your team principal, Andy Cowell or Adrian Newey? I don't know the answer to that question. I think I'd go Andy Cowell, but of course, Lawrence Stroll is all-seeing, all-knowing, omnipotent, omnibenevolent, omniscient. So who am I to doubt Lawrence Stroll, Papa Stroll? I mean, look at his choice of drivers, right? He gets it right each and every single time. Fernando Alonso, man, from Oviedo, Asturias, alongside Lawrence Stroll, of course, said with tongue very firmly in cheek. But that's your breaking news. I don't know where to... Honestly, this is bonkers. I thought the breaking news was going to be Christian Horner announced as team principal over there at the Green Machine Aston Martin, but it is not. Andy Cowell is gone, succeeded by none other than the last airbender, the one they call Adrian Newey. Oh, the humanity.